Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military of a Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 22nd of July of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Ukraine and probably about the most important piece of news regarding the political life of Ukraine and the situation with Zelensky. So this is the article and let's discuss this in details. Ukraine's State Security Service SBU, State Bureau of Investigation SBI and Prosecutor General's Office PGO today conducted 70 searches related to employees of the Independent National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine and Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office, detaining at least one official accused of spying for Russia. So today Zelensky began searches in the NABU offices. So what is NABU? NABU said in a statement that the searches involved at least 15 employees and were conducted without court warrants. This is very important. In most cases, the grounds cited to these actions are the alleged involvement of certain individuals in traffic accidents. However, some employees are being accused of possible connections with the Russian Federation. These are unrelated matters. So what is NABU? In 2015, the Western countries tried to force Ukraine to create this office. This is a government office, but this is independent government office. And the main purpose of this National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine is to investigate corruption among high top officials. Let's say if a president of Ukraine has something with corruption, this National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine will investigate this. And as you can see, Zelensky began attacking this bureau. Furthermore, by the morning of the 22nd of July of 2025, this was the only government office of Ukraine who could attack Zelensky and basically to ruin his career and to ruin him as a president. But as we can see, Zelensky began his attack first. Basically, this NABU, this organization today was destroyed. Furthermore, during the day, the parliament of Ukraine adopted another law, and according to this law, this office, this National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, lost any independence and currently is under complete control under the General Prosecutor of Ukraine. So today some sources are saying that Ukrainians lost its democracy finally. So let's wait and see, of course, what is going to be next. It is very interesting to see the reaction of the Western countries. As for now, we know that the NABU officers and several deputies of Ukraine made different statements to the ambassadors and to different politicals in the world, in the Europe. But as we can see right now, nobody said anything, nobody commented the situation at all. So as we can see, the situation plays completely in Zelensky's favor, and now it's going to be very difficult to investigate anything about him and about his activities and about his inner circle. So now let's continue, and first let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. If you remember, during the previous video we discussed the situation in the city and we got very interesting video, and according to that video the Russians managed to enter already the central part of the city of Pokrovsk. We have added significant contested area in the southwestern part, and let's take a look at this video once again. Today everybody was shocked by this video because according to this video the Ukrainians were moving in the central part of Ukraine, in the central part of the city of Pokrovsk, and they thought that they were in a safe place, but at some point the Russians sabotage and reconnaissance group began attacking them with rifles. This vehicle was damaged and destroyed. Several Ukrainian soldiers were wounded. And this episode took place exactly in the central part of the city of Pokrovsk along Zakhistnika of Ukraine Street. And of course, after this video, every single source began asking himself a question whether we need to adjust the map by the central part or let's keep everything at this. And we were waiting for additional details, additional geolocations, maybe pro-Russian resources will publish additional information or something like this. And during the previous 24 hours, we got at least least 2 more videos that clarifies the situation in this area. And this is, for example, a first video. And in this moment, we can see the last seconds of this vehicle that was attacked by the Russian sabotage and reconnaissance group. In this second, first soldier left vehicle while the vehicle was moving. Here we can see another soldier that left vehicle, and after the vehicle stopped, we can see 2 more soldiers that left this vehicle and began moving further in the southern direction towards this gas station. So this is detail. This is very important detail because Ukrainians suppose that this is the only area, secured area in this region. Later we got another video, this one, and here we can see how Russians destroyed this vehicle with FPV drone. And the most important thing in this video is that first the Russian drone was flying in this area trying to search for Ukrainian soldiers, or maybe to try to search for reinforcements and reserves, and then this drone attacked vehicle itself. And as you can see in the final seconds of this video, you could see Ukrainian soldier who most likely was killed, and he was in this truck. So this is the situation, and now it's clear that Ukrainians don't have strong control over the southwestern part of the city of Pokrovsk anymore. For example, today pro-Ukraine resources of course published several articles and statements regarding the situation, telling us that everything is okay, there is no reason for panic. Ukrainians control the situation. After this after this episode, they sent additional forces in the southwestern of the city of Pokrovsk with the purpose to stabilize the situation, and many other different blah 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 things. And telling the truth, I don't believe even a single word that was stated by Ukrainian sources, because yet pro-Ukrainian sources, despite their statements that everything was stabilized, haven't published even a single video where we could see how Ukrainians, let's say, capture another soldier of another Russian sabotage and reconnaissance group who is operating in this area. So that is why it seems that the Russians have much stronger control over the southwestern part of the city of Pokrovsk than we used to think probably yesterday and the day before yesterday. At the same time, the Russians continue their pressure in the northeastern part of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, and during the previous 24 hours we had lots of very interesting changes on the ground. First, let's compare the map between the dates. For example, this is the situation in the city of Pokrovsk in the northeastern flank by the end of the 21st of July of 2025, and this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of July of 2025. As you can see, the Russians, according to information we have, managed to improve their positions in the city, in the village of Novotaretska. The Russians captured this stronghold. The Russians finished the battle for the settlement of Boykovka. The Russians secured the settlement of Fedorovka. And so as you can see, the changes are huge. For example, when talking about this village of Novotaretska, this village was taken and secured by the Russians according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. They stated that as a result of resolute actions, units of the Group of Forces Center managed to establish complete control over the settlement. When talking about, for example, this dense network of the fortifications and this company stronghold in the village of Boykovka, these two territories were taken by the Russians according to pro-Ukrainian resource from the deep state team. So they adjusted their maps today as well, and we can see that the Russians, as we can see, managed to improve their position significantly. Furthermore, according to the same pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians secured the village of Fedorovka. But the most important update of the deep state update is that the Russians managed to improve their position significantly in the northwestern direction. So as you can see, they added a huge gray zone to the northwest of the settlement of Mayak. So according to this report, the Russians during the previous 24 hours managed to improve their positions significantly and to take everything under complete control along this red line. So deep state says that this is a gray zone, nothing more, but if this is a gray zone, this means that most likely the Russians are about to stabilize the situation, to dig in deeper, and to cut this territory at least into many pieces. If the Russians indeed manage to break through this area and to get the outskirts of Novoshakhova, this means that the villages of Shakhova, Vladimirovka, Taretska, Sofievka were cut by the Russians from the west. Now the Ukrainians have just one possibility, is to supply their contingent in this area just from the northeast, from the settlement of Drushkovka. So as you can see, the situation in this direction remains tense for the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians still haven't managed to stabilize the situation, and telling the truth, we are waiting for additional huge adjustments and progress on the ground. Once again, I would like to remind you that tomorrow, according to information we have, most likely another round of talks is going to take place on the territory of Istanbul between the team of the Russian Federation and the team of Ukraine, and most likely this upcoming night both the Russians and the Ukrainians will intensify their activities trying to get as strong as possible cards before these talks. Most likely Ukraine this upcoming night will launch massive missile strike deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation, or they will carry out another special operation with the purpose to destroy Russian strategic aviation or something like this. The Russians probably tomorrow before the beginning of talks will announce control over several settlements. Probably the Russians will publish additional videos from the city of Pokrovsk itself just to show that the Russians have as possible as strong cards ever and that the Ukrainians have nothing in their hands from their side. So this is the situation in the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Furthermore, today we got geolocations from the settlement of Poltavka. The Russians began offensive in this direction as well. During the previous 24 hours, several buildings and constructions were secured in the southwestern part of the settlement. We are waiting, of course, for additional progress on the ground, and it seems that the village of Poltavka would be taken by the Russians also in coming days. The city of Konstantinovka. The most important updates and interesting are coming from the settlement of Sherbinovka. The Ukrainians most likely were caught in cauldron on the territory of the settlement. The Russians are pushing from the west, the Russians are pushing from the east and the northeast. And today we got this video published by the Ukrainian sources. And in this video we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians, or probably in several meters from the settlement of Sherbinovka. There are lots of episodes in this video of how Ukrainians were FPV droning Russians, and several episodes were geolocated. Two attacks of the armored forces of Ukraine took place here with drones, and one of the attacks took place here, so which means that the Russians are getting closer and closer, and that the Russians are tightening and tightening the news around Ukrainian positions in the area of the settlement of Sherbinovka. It seems that in coming days the Ukrainians would be forced to fall back from this area, and the Russians will finish the battle for this territory. Now let's talk about the Liman direction. During the previous 24 hours, we had the biggest changes on the ground exactly in this area. So we have 1, 2, 3 episodes, different videos that confirm Russian control, additional control on the ground. So let's take a look at this video. Here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians along this tree line to the southwest of the settlement of Lipova. This place was geolocated, and this is exactly the area where Ukrainians attack Russians. Based on this video, we colored this contested area as the area under complete Russian control. This is another episode from the same video, and here we can see another attack of the armored forces of Ukraine on Russian soldiers and units in these fields, and based on this video we have adjusted this part. So as you can see, during the previous 24 hours the Russians improved their positions significantly, and now it's clear that the Russians are moving further with the purpose to attack the settlement of Shandrigolova. With one of the roads of attacks, the Russians are going to cut Shandrigolova from the south, so they will try to cut supply and support, and another road of attack goes in the northern direction with the purpose to attack the settlement from the north. If you remember, during the previous days we got videos how the Russians were destroying dams and, let's say, facilities to the west of the settlement with the purpose to cut the village from supply and support from the mainland. It seems that as soon as the Russians get the village, they will take this village very fast. Furthermore, the Russians established complete FPV drone control over the settlements of Kolodizhe and Stavki. It seems that Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the beginning of counter-offensive operation with the purpose to stabilize the situation, or at least to distract attention of the armored forces of the Russian Federation. But the Russians control the situation and destroy everything as soon as they see the movement. The village of Tarskoye, which is most likely located in the gray zone, there are very heavy clashes. Today, pro-Ukrainian resources published this video. We will not watch this video because we have violence and casualties in this video, so that is why we will skip this. But we have geolocation, first of all, and this is very important, that the Russians were attacked with Ukrainian drones and artillery in the central part. As for now, it's unclear how exactly the Russians entered this part of the settlement, so that is why we have adjusted the perimeter of the settlement and the central part. So it seems that this village is in the gray zone, and some source reported that both the Russians and the Ukrainians have possibilities to answer the village, but without, let's say, getting deeper in this area. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the South Donetsk direction. We have a lot of icons, as you can see, and it seems that right after a very short operational pause, the Russians resumed their offensive operation. As for now, the Russians are bombing and attacking Ukraine position along the entire line of combat contact in the South Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk direction. This is the first thing, and the second thing is that the Russians once again managed to improve their positions. This time the Russians are getting closer and closer to the settlement of Novopavlovka. The sources reported that the Russians managed to improve their positions, to cross the river of Vovcha, to improve their positions, to get better and advantageous positions, and to get very close to the settlement of Filia. The sources reported that the distance between the village of Filia and passable edge Russian positions in the area of Yalta is less than 2.5 kilometers. It seems that the battle for Novopavlovka is going to start very soon, probably these upcoming days. Now let's discuss the situation in the Zaporozhye direction. The most important updates are coming from the settlement of Mala Takmachka. Today, pro-Russian resources published this video, very long video of how exactly the battle for the settlement was taking place. During this video, we have a lots of episodes how Russians were attacking, how the Russians were storming the settlement, how the Russians were bombing a former prison, how the Russians were clearing the area, trying to improve their positions. So lots of episodes, but just several of them were geolocated. One of the episodes took place exactly in this area, and based on this video we adjusted the map. But it seems that the Russians by the end of the 22nd of July established control for more than at least 33% of the settlement, mainly in the eastern and the southeastern parts of the village. It seems that the storm of Mala Takmachka is ongoing and the Russians continue offensive. At the same time, several pro-Russian resources reported that the Russians during the previous 24 hours improved their positions significantly in the fields on the direction towards the settlement of Stepnogorsk. All these trenches and fortifications in this area were taken by the Russians, and as we can see, the Russians continue their offensive further in the northeastern direction. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, push your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.